There are many important factors that a native speaker implicitly knows about their language. First, a speaker will know what sounds are a part and not a part of their language. When a baby is born, is at the most crucial period for identifying all sounds encompassed in their language. As the baby grows up, it latches onto these sounds that are frequently used and sort of throws away or disregards the sounds that are not used. Native speakers also know when and how certain sounds can be placed in words. This all comes from the idea that language is arbitrary, meaning that there is a certain set of rules in order for the way sounds can be placed in a word. All native speakers subconsciously understand these rules. Another thing that native speakers implicitly know about the formation of words is the morphological process involved in the making of words. For example, the suffix ed added commonly to the end of words to make them past tense. A 3-year-old understands this concept and has seen it very often, so he applies it for himself and says to his mother, "I goed to the store with Daddy." This sentence may not actually be entirely correct, but the 3-year-old knew that to make something past tense you need to add the ed form to the end of the word. In addition to knowing how to make a word, a native speaker also implicitly knows about the sentence formation and rules that are involved in putting a sentence together. Native speakers understand how a sentence is supposed to be structured, even if they claim they don't. If native speakers are given a sentence like, "I went to my store on Little Blue Bike," they are going to know that this sentence does not make sense. Native speakers know and understand the implied context, complex rules of their language, and they might not even realize it. So, what is language? Many people have strived to come up with an exact definition to what language really is. Charles Hockett, an American linguistic anthropologist who studied Native American Chinese and Fijian languages, referred to language as biology. Language is a way that we communicate. Communication is any process in which ideas, info, messages can be transferred between a transmitter of the message and the receiver of that message. Charles Hockett's original design features included language only vocal and auditory channels. This idea was later changed to any channel that can transmit a message. For example, things like gestures, visual cues, smell, and electronic communication. Human language's design features vary quite a bit from the communication of animals. Perhaps one of the most important things we learned this year about human language is that it is arbitrary. This means that we have a word for everything, and that spoken word doesn't necessarily have to coincide with the object it was given to. Another big difference between our language and animal communication is that we are able to discuss things that may not be happening at the present moment. This means that we can discuss things like what we did last week, what job we hope to land in the summer, and what Jennifer did to Robert last Tuesday night. Our language gives us the ability to discuss a large variety of topics, where in animal communication, they may not be able to discuss much at all. This idea is called discreteness. We can construct a complex message out of a bunch of smaller messages. Think of it as a cake. To complete a cake, or the message, you need to first mix up all the smaller ingredients to make one big cake, or a sentence in this case. Acquiring a language is a process that comes naturally to us. Learning your native language is an ability that is hardwired into our brain since birth. Babies spend the first periods of their life, usually 6 to 8 months, listening to sounds. When the baby is surrounded by a certain language, he or she will cue on sounds that are used most often in their native language. Once a baby recognizes all the sounds that are used, those are the only sounds that they will recognize. B.F. Skinner said that language acquisition was acquired by watching and learning from others' behaviors. For example, a child will try out different phrases and sounds, and will learn based on the feedback they receive from their caregivers, whether it's positive or negative. Another theorist, Noam Chomsky, said that language acquisition is an innate part of the human mind. This means that learning a language is something that we are born to do, and it will come naturally. In class, we talked about the stages that are involved in language acquisition. The first stage of this process was pre-production. This is the stage that occurs before any type of production of words. This stage involves something that we call babbling. Babbling is when babies test out all the sounds of language and start to recognize and use the sounds of their language. Next is when they take those sounds they learn and put them together to form words, in the stage that we call early production. The last stage is when they take these words and start to put them into sentences. This is referred to as speech emergence stage. Once a child is about 3 or 4 years old, they are usually completely fluent in their native languages with little to no mistakes. So why is it that humans are the only organisms that have been able to master the art of language? The anatomy of the human brain is more complex and intricate than any other organism. The human brain is split up into 2 different hemispheres, each one performing its own specific job. Our brain is also collateral, meaning that we have 2 hemispheres that are responsible for the other side of the body. For example, the left hemisphere would be connected to the right side of the body, and the right hemisphere would be involved with the left side of the body. Since the left side of the brain has so much understanding with forming language, the damage to the left side of the brain will result in any kind of language disability. The frontal lobe of your brain is referred to as Broca's area, named after a physician in the 19th century, Paul Broca. Damage to this area of the brain will result in a condition called Broca's aphasia. This is when patients can still understand the situation they are seeing but may not be able to describe it. Patients with Broca's aphasia will lose all their motor skills. Though they are still able to follow conversations, forming a sentence takes a tremendous amount of effort and can become extremely frustrating to the patient. Another condition, referred to as Wernicke's aphasia, is when the patient loses all ability to understand others due to damage to the area known as Wernicke's area. This area is in charge of understanding auditory stimulus, or in other words, being able to understand speech. They are able to speak rapidly, unlike the Broca's aphasia patients, but their speech is not grammatical and oftentimes doesn't make any sense. The structure of our language is composed into 3 major components, such as sounds, words, word formation, and syntax, which is the structure in which words can be placed. There are many different elements involved in making sounds. The lungs are what provide the air to make the speech, which is then passed through the trachea, and then the air is passed through the vocal cords. The vocal cords then vibrate to produce sound. This sound is then transformed into different sounds based on what part of your mouth is used. For example, the tongue and the lips are used to form vowel consonants. The teeth gives a place of articulation for words. There are also many other places in your mouth that are used for the articulation of words. To name a few, a bilabial fricative is when you use both your lips to make the sounds like B as in boy or P as in peach. Labiodental is when you use the bottom lip with the top teeth to form a sound like in the word fresh. Dentals are when the tip of your tongue is placed on the edge of your top teeth, resulting in a sound like the word or like the sound in the word 3. And interdentals is the place that produces a sound when your tongue is placed behind the teeth. For example, the sound L like you hear in lazy. Combining all these little sounds together is how we form words. We will always be able to form new words. We need to form new words to give names to new inventions, technologies, and brands. We form new words by combining words together or clipping part of a word off. Sometimes we even borrow words that we take completely from another language, or we just take it and modify it slightly. These words are then placed together into a sentence. Syntax is a set of rules that determine where words belong in a sentence. These rules, better known as grammar, is divided into 2 main groups, prescriptive and descriptive grammar. Prescriptive grammar are the rules that are taught to you when you are in school. Prescriptive includes all of the proper grammatical rules that you should use. Descriptive grammar is what we actually use in everyday life. It may not be grammatically correct, but it is the way words are actually used. Meaning is developed by the use of semantics. Semantics involves the presence of a sender and a receiver of that message. The sender will encode a message, and the receiver will then decipher that message. The message can be received without necessarily needing to hear it. We can see a person's facial expression or even their body gestures. We as native speakers understand phrases that a non-native speaker might not understand or get confused when they hear it. There are many ways that electronic communication differ from the rest of the types of communication. Electronic communication is the form of communication that uses abbreviations. Phrases like LOL or WTF have evolved because of electronics. It has become common to use abbreviations like this, or what I like to call text talk. Another reason that electronic communication is different is because of the use of emojis. Emojis are like small pictures that stand for something. For example, a smiley face can mean that you're happy. Sad face can mean that you're upset, or other emojis that stand for not very appropriate things. Many of these forms of electronic communication can be carried into spoken communication. People have started to use words like BRB and LOL in real-life situations. Though people may think adding abbreviations into actual verbal communication is ruining the English language, in all actuality, the changing evolution of the language is what keeps it alive. There are many different opinions on language. Prescriptivists mainly want to preserve the English language, therefore the thought of the language change startles them. On the other hand, descriptivists believe that language change is not only inevitable but necessary for the language to survive. There are many different factors that influence language. All of these factors lead to different varieties of language. Geography is one of the main reasons there is a variety of languages and dialects. Separation of groups will lead to their own language, and over time, the different speech communities will begin to develop. Other factors include age, social class, gender, education level, and even race. The language that you are surrounded by will greatly impact the manner in which you speak. Thank you for listening.